What if I told you that one of the world's biggest fast food empires was built on stolen ideas? A machine smashed with an axe and a recipe copy from a competitor. This is the untold story of Burger King. In 1952, America was experiencing a cultural revolution. The car hop craze was sweeping the nation, and people were abandoning home-cooked meals for cheap hamburgers and greasy fries delivered straight to their cars. Leading this movement was McDonald's, a revolutionary restaurant run by two brothers who'd created something called the Speedy Service System. It was an assembly line kitchen that could produce massive quantities of food at incredible speed. When Keith Kramer and his stepfather Matthew Burns heard McDonald's was making over $100,000 a year, that's more than $1 million in today's money, they knew they had to see it firsthand. Themselves. What they witnessed changed everything. They were so impressed that they immediately began researching how to replicate this model. During their search, they discovered the miracle Insta machines, the Insta Shake machine that could produce 6 milkshakes per minute, and the Insta Broiler oven that could cook 400 burgers an hour using an automated conveyor system. The burgers would slide through electric heating elements and drop into a vat of ketchup, mustard, and special seasonings. 90 seconds from raw beef to finished burger. Keith and Matthew struck a deal to use these machines in their new Florida restaurant, which they called Instaburger, the predecessor to Burger King. The name was a direct reference to the instant burger-making machines. So yes, Burger King was literally started as a McDonald's copycat. But there was one massive problem. The Insta Broiler ovens were terrible. They broke down every few days, were extremely temperamental, and produced mediocre burgers at best. Ironically, if this equipment had actually worked properly, Burger King, as we know it today, probably wouldn't exist. In 1953, while the first Instaburger restaurant was still under construction in Jacksonville, something strange happened. A man named David Edgerton was on his way to becoming a Dairy Queen franchisee when he stumbled across the half-built restaurant. He thought it was a Dairy Queen and stopped to chat with the builders. When Keith and Matthew explained they were actually building a completely new chain called Instaburger, they saw an opportunity. They gave David a demonstration of their machines, which thankfully worked perfectly that day. David was amazed. He believed he'd glimpsed the future of dining and immediately backed out of his Dairy Queen deal to open an Instaburger instead. Before agreeing, David made a crucial suggestion: change the name to Instaburger King. He even sketched a logo of a cartoon king sitting on a hamburger. Keith and Matthew loved it. The word king gave the brand a premium feel, and having a character mascot made it unique. When the first store opened in April 1953, the sign featured David's logo and new name. Instaburger King was officially born. 1 year later, they began advertising franchises, claiming it was the greatest advancement in food service in 50 years, and that a $20,000 investment could pay for itself in just 12 months. But there was a problem. Actually, multiple problems. The ordering system was confusing. Customers ordered at one window, paid up front, received numbered tickets, then collected food at a second window where they often had to repeat their entire order. People hated it. Plus, the Instabroiler kept breaking down, and their burgers cost 18 cents, while competitors charged 15 cents. Meanwhile, David opened his Miami location in March 1954, facing the same equipment nightmares. Despite this, he believed so strongly in the fast food concept that he wanted to open more stores. There was just one problem. He had no money left. David needed a partner. After several restaurateurs passed on the opportunity, one recommended he speak with James McLammer, who owned a small local restaurant. James had lived through unimaginable hardship. Born in 1926 to a wealthy family, his father lost everything in the 1929 stock market crash. His grandfather died shortly after. His mother was committed to a psychiatric hospital, and he never saw her again. His father lost his job during the Great Depression. They moved to his grandmother's farm, which was then destroyed by fire. Despite this tragic start, James worked his way through Cornell University, arriving with just $11 in his pocket. After graduation, he saved enough to open his own modest restaurant in Miami, the Brickell Bridge. When David pitched James on partnering to open multiple Burger King stores, James was immediately interested. Both were Cornell graduates. Both wanted to build a restaurant chain rather than run a single location. David estimated his first store was generating a 28% profit. James asked to see the financial records. David handed him a peach basket stuffed with receipts and bills. After sorting through everything, James discovered the truth. The store wasn't making a 28% profit. It was operating at a 56% loss. Any rational person would have walked away, but James didn't. He was drawn to David's vision and integrity. So he sold his restaurant and invested every penny he had, $20,000, to become David's 50-50 partner in a business that was currently losing money. You might think James and David would use that capital to fix their existing problems. Instead, they got overexcited and opened 2 more locations with the same faulty equipment and mediocre product. James later admitted this was a critical mistake that pushed them to the brink of bankruptcy. To avoid running out of money, James convinced a wealthy friend to invest $65,000 for half the business. And what did they do with this money? They opened 3 more locations. By the end of 1956, they were drowning in debt, with 7 unreliable ovens producing mediocre food. Then, something miraculous happened. During a busy lunch shift, the familiar sound of the Broiler grinding to a halt echoed through the kitchen. The machine had broken down again. David had just fixed it days earlier. He was furious. So he grabbed a hatchet from his toolbox and literally smashed the machine to pieces. James was amused but worried. They'd be out of commission until a replacement arrived from California. But David had a different plan. He vowed to build something better. With help from a local mechanic, David spent 3 weeks in continuous trial and error. Finally, they had a breakthrough. David created a new flame broiler that used gas instead of electricity. Not only was it infinitely more reliable, but the gas flame created a unique flame-broiled flavor that would become Burger King's signature taste, a marketing point they still use today. That impulsive decision to smash a machine with a hatchet had forced innovation that changed everything. With their new reliable equipment, things started improving. David and James decided to visit the original founders in Jacksonville to see how they were doing. Keith and Matthew were still struggling. They'd bought a movable stainless steel building, thinking they could relocate if sales were poor. David and James sat outside this new location for 2 hours. Not a single customer came. James went for a walk and discovered something shocking. Just 1 block away, a rundown burger stand with customers lined up around the building. Nearly everyone was ordering giant quarter-pound burgers on 5-inch buns, topped with lettuce, tomatoes, pickles, onions, and mayo. These burgers were massive compared to what Burger King and McDonald sold. James bought 2 and brought 1 back to David. They agreed it was the best burger they'd ever had. On the drive back to Miami, James suggested they create a similar burger for their stores. He even had the perfect name, the Whopper. David agreed to try it. This was risky. The Whopper would cost 37 cents, while competitors like McDonald's charged just 15 cents. But the gamble paid off spectacularly. The Whopper's quarter-pound patty, mountain of toppings, and flame-broiled flavor became an instant hit. Within months of becoming the home of the Whopper, Burger King of Miami saw explosive sales growth. They finally had reliable equipment, a popular signature product, and a clear market niche. But while Miami thrived, the original Jacksonville location continued to struggle. Keith and Matthew eventually defaulted on their loans, and control passed to their lender, Ben Stein. James saw an opportunity. He negotiated with Ben to acquire both national and international franchise rights. In exchange, Ben would receive 15% of all revenue without doing any work. The deal was signed in 1959. David and James now had full control. They immediately dropped Insta from the name. The company officially became Burger King, home of the Whopper. With full ownership, James and David set their sights on becoming the top fast food franchise in America, which meant catching McDonald's. In 1962, Burger King opened 7 stores and made $73,058 in profit. McDonald's opened 107 stores and made $439,310. The gap was enormous. But by 1965, Burger King had closed that gap to 2-to-1 and was growing rapidly. James estimated they were about 3 years behind McDonald's in scale, but matching their growth pace. He genuinely believed they might catch up. Then, everything changed. In April 1965, McDonald's went public. The stock started at $22.50 and hit $30 by day's end. By month's end, it reached $49 and kept climbing for 3 decades. A $1,000 investment in that IPO would eventually be worth over $6 million. The race was over before it really began. McDonald's now had unlimited capital. James knew they needed a powerful partnership to compete. In 1967, the Pillsbury Company approached Burger King about a merger. James was eager. Pillsbury could finance the exponential growth needed to match McDonald's. David preferred staying independent, but understood James wanted more family time after years of non-stop work. Pillsbury absorbed Burger King and its 247 restaurants for $18 million. James, David, and their investor each received 10% of Pillsbury, making them all very wealthy. But the partnership wasn't perfect. Pillsbury became heavily involved in operations, contradicting their promise of autonomy. In 1969, David resigned and moved on to other ventures. James stayed longer, pushing Pillsbury to take Burger King public or restructure like McDonald's. But Pillsbury wanted slower, more controlled growth. Disappointed, James stepped away after his 5-year commitment in 1972, though he remained a consultant until his death in 1996. Since 1967, Burger King's ownership has changed hands multiple times, sold between investment firms, taken public, merged with Tim Hortons to form Restaurant Brands International. Today, Burger King is worth between $7 and $10 billion, operates in over 100 countries, and serves millions of customers daily. The foundation of this empire was laid by 2 men who gambled everything on a failing business, smashed equipment with a hatchet to force innovation, and copied their signature product from a competitor. While the original founders deserve some credit, it was really James McLamore and David Edgerton who transformed a bankrupt startup into a global phenomenon through relentless determination and creative problem-solving. Their story proves that in business, execution matters more than originality. Sometimes the best ideas aren't new, they're just better versions of what already exists.